We've got VIPs in attendance today and all that. So we got. All right. We are here at 1 o'clock for the Pottsville 7 update, our monthly update, I guess. And so who wants to take the floor and take off with this?
I've got one question that is for you guys. And we talked earlier about the property adjoining on the west end that Hecla has. Have you guys made any contact with them, or is there anything going on there?
Last week I reached out to the last month I reached out to the
Lands?
and they gave me a new contact. Last week I reached out to the new contact. She responded favorably yesterday that she would be happy to meet and that she wanted me to bring aerial photos and maps. And so Sydney's now trying to set a time with her in the next couple of weeks, and then I was going to approach you guys about any help you might have with an aerial map or photo or drawing or anything I could show her what we're talking about.
I do have some, but I got them right here. I got them right here from the county.
Okay. Well, and I can go that route too.
Yeah, I think I sent you a piece a map that had that part listed with the amounts and stuff, and I think I got that here too.
Okay.
You send that by email, didn't you? Or-
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'll search that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's see. I don't think we have any area photos, but you can do that on the internet.
Yeah.
Well, the one I got here was aerial.
Oh, was it?
So what I'll do, I'll let you know once I get the appointment and everything.
What
But
was the girl's name? Do you remember?
Anne?
Okay, that's the same girl I talked to. She's
so what she said was she would be happy to meet me, preferably in Coeur d'Alene. Please bring maps and photos. And so I'm taking that as the open door, and we'll see what they do.
cool.
What we're talking about, in case you don't understand, is there's as you go out to the park, there's a split in the road, and you go to the left, and you go maybe half mile. Is it that far to
Quarter
the
mile.
to the quarter mile to the park itself? And
Right.
then and at those two roads, there's that triangle piece of land is right there. It's kind of a wetland somewhat. There's a creek going through it, but there's a lot of low places. And Hecla Mining Company just got that in the last 2 years or so.
Yeah, they own that piece, and it butts up to the west part of the Pottsville Park. Yeah.
And we're hoping that they would donate that to the county or make some kind of a deal so that we could have additional parking and additional places for like a nature trail or a frisbee golf course or something else, with the added to the park.
There's a drawing trend, at least speaking with Cotter, there's a drawing trend in that. I mean, that used to be like standing water, and now is a marsh that is kind of verging on more meadow. So it's, in terms of being usable land for a park-like setting, I think, I'm no climate person, but I would say your chances are probably pretty good of being able to develop that.
Yeah.
I figure that it's going to be dry.
I think the northeast corner of that section is kind of high and dry compared to the rest of it, and that would be an ideal spot for more parking right there.
So we agreed as a county we'd reach out, see if they had an interest. Hearing from the county, maybe they've been very good to partner with on other issues. So
Very good.
knowing I was going to be seeing you guys face to face, I followed up.
Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
You guys, I'm okay with. He scares me, so I don't know. I'm
That's why we bring him along.
twist my arm. Yeah. All right. What else you got?
Well, I think
I can account this.
yes. Well, this guy actually arranged this with Holly, so we take over.
Yeah, so Holly is my boss. And so, yeah, when I last saw you folks, I was putting the finishing touches on a Resource Advisory Council grant application that is a Forest Service function. I'm going to put my foot in my mouth here a little bit, kind of funding stream. And fast forward to now, and I was awarded, or we were awarded $131,000 towards the Shoshone Park / Pottsville Park. And that money is earmarked for the replacement of the restroom facilities out at Shoshone Park. We're looking at, well, ordering those new concrete vault restroom facilities sooner than later, kind of as soon as practical, because the lead time on those is such that timetable, then we get to work backwards from the delivery date of those new restrooms from the manufacturer, and then we would pump the existing restrooms, demolish them, restore the landscape, whether that's filling in with dirt or collapsing a concrete vault. But anyways, we would work backwards from that delivery date. And so right now we're looking at, if we were to put in an order, it would be fall of next year at the absolute
That's
earliest.
the earliest one.
Just like
Yeah.
that, a big asterisk on that, because that
Some of
I
them
don't
are
wanna-
2 years out, and then some.
yeah, 18 months is very normal for the industry right now. So it's that next fall is like, what?
No.
That's
Yeah.
exciting. But I don't want to get too many hopes up on that one. But yeah, we'd be working backwards from that delivery date on site prep and demolition of the pre-existing restroom facilities.
And that RAC grant covers the demolition and the.
Yes. So the way that we came up with a budget on that, because $130,000 does not sound like a whole lot of money for doing demolition of 6 structures and installation of 2 prefabbed structures that are made of concrete that are being shipped from Missoula at the closest. These gentlemen are going to be project leads on it, so they're going to be general contracting it. And thus we're not having to go out to bid to a company that's hoping to walk away with a 5%, 10% profit margin. So yeah, we're saving a considerable amount of funds and able to be a very competitive grant for what we were proposing to do, because these guys are going to run it. There'll be some match on the Forest Service side in terms of we'll be paying to pump out the existing restrooms. And a little bit of labor here and there, but for the most part, these guys are going to be renting the equipment, getting operators, making the trips to the dump, and also digging the holes for the wall toilets, with some Forest Service input and sign off when it comes to actual grade, slope, stuff like that.
All these years and your career's finally ended up in the.
Sure.
I tell you what, I went to college for not what I do now. Planning for where people go to the bathroom in the woods. So yeah, that's the rack. So we're really excited about getting that awarded.
We were excited.
It's a great step, and it's it doesn't it seems like a lot of money to me, but for what we're
It's
getting.
going to take all of it.
We're not going to be giving one.
And like I say, we're getting a deal on the demolition and that kind of thing. Luckily, otherwise we'd be looking for more money.
And then Andrea, our archaeologist, we got the signed concurrence from the Idaho State Historic Preservation Office, blessing us to move forward on a restoration project on the West Kitchen structure. We haven't chased money for that or anything. That's just kind of been going concurrently on that element of the park. So having that State Historic Preservation Office concurrence is huge. That really allows us to start pursuing, chasing funds and then also implementation. And then I just recently last night, got a draft document from our forest health shop in Coeur d'Alene at the forest level, and they Cotter and I, Ian Cotter, our trails foreman for the district, and I walked around with some PhDs who do forest health for a living, and we looked at trees and the condition of the of the forest in and surrounding Shoshone Park. So I should be getting the official signed off version of that in the next month or so, and I will definitely pass that off to you guys, because the skinny is that we are looking at quite a bit of disease. Disease and insect infestation in the trees. So, and we're looking at very large trees as well as pretty small diameter trees, and it's kind of a carte blanche across the spectrum of size. So yeah, we'll be needing to put our heads together of what kind of work we want to do, knowing that we have overhead hazards that are kind of a big winter storm or not so big storm away from coming down on infrastructure that we're talking about spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on.
We had a tree hit the cabin here about a month ago, and we were lucky it hit just the corner of the cabin.
Yes, and we were out there yesterday bucking that up and looking at the damage to the garage as well as the cabin.
Yeah.
So yeah,
The
it's
garage, I know it took a pretty good hit because it's really hard to open those doors now.
so anyways, just and that's kind of just softening the ground for a later conversation about what we want to do long term when it comes to what we call in Forest Service vegetation management, which often the rest of the world would look at and call a timber sale or something like that, kind of a logging operation.
You're talking around the park, with that whole.
Yeah, I mean, if I walked you around the park, and especially walking out there with people who look at tree health for a living, and they're pointing at things, I'm like, oh, so that's really bad. And they're like, yeah, that's really bad. That means you have this boring beetle and this spruce that's this big around right next to the West Kitchen that we're talking about in the near future, putting a bunch of time and money into, not to mention just a ton of people in and around doing timber framing work. And meanwhile, we've got these spruce that are this big around that are probably hollow.
It's more than just a few hazard trees that are going to be coming down. So it's going to look more like a little timber sale once we get in there and able to do some of the work.
And this is not, this is a postage stamp example of what we're dealing with district and really forest wide in terms of disease.
Okay, the question I have is that going to mean the park will be closed for that period of time? I would assume if they're logging in there.
We're not even beginning to plan for this. This is more like, we know that there's been some underlying issues, and we brought in the experts, Forest Service experts, to tell us how bad it is, and they're telling us it's pretty bad. So yeah, we definitely get to sit down and between digging holes for new toilets and writing grants for redoing a timber frame building, we get to think about, okay, what is the best way to make it so that we're not putting a bunch of resources, investment into a place that is basically downrange from very large trees that can fall over and destroy things and worse, kill people.
So a concern that I would have then is, can that be done like this time of year versus middle of summer when people are wanting to use the park? Or is it so dangerous that the park should be closed for a year or something like that? How's that all going to work out?
Holly hasn't seen what we're talking about yet, but looking at the initial kind of the draft report that our Forest Health folks put, the like, oh my God, danger right now, like it's not that immediate. It's more, most trees there are green. It's not like it's a sea of standing dead beetle kill that you would see in like the Denver Front Range or something like that, where limbs that are this big are shedding out of the canopy 100 feet up and falling onto the ground. Like you're not seeing that kind of limb cast at the base of every tree. It's more of just a general concern and needing to put that on the priority list. It would make sense to deal with at least the big, those big trees that are like 50 to 100 feet from structures that we're talking about putting a ton of money into and time. And that also are places where the public congregate. I mean, when you got picnic, you have a dozen picnic tables that are within striking range of these big old trees. It's like I don't want to be the guy who said, yeah, this park is totally open this summer, and yeah, water system's on, make reservations, and then go out there one day and one of these 200-foot tall trees is laying on the ground and it's smushed 3 picnic tables. I would rather have that tree on the ground this time of year under our own relative control. Tipping trees is not necessarily one of those things that you're always 100% in control on, but I'd like to do it when there's no people around and putting it where we want to put it. You know, at that point, planning what are we going to do with the wood.
Early spring or late fall, but you know, and then you'd have your cleanup.
Yeah, and do we do it as a timber sale? Do we do it as an in-house thing, and then what do we do with all this wood? Does it disappear via firewood? Which, you know, it's not legal to collect firewood there. We turn a blind eye to it when it's like one tree there and one tree there. But when you're talking these, you know, dozens of trees, it's.
And I'm guessing also there's a priority of saving as many trees as possible, because we
absolutely.
don't want an open field. I mean, we already got that.
And I realize I'm kind of approach this back afterwards, excuse me, but yeah, the Forest Health report, you know, specifies your western red cedar, your large, and your western white pine are kind of your 3 species that we want to save, and then in fact we want to plant. So you know, timing this not only with cutting down trees, what do you do with the wood, but then also on the back end, planting decent sized trees that are going to survive in a park like setting. I mean, we're not talking out in the back 40 where the only thing a little tree has to worry about is a deer or an elk. You know, we're talking about kids with soccer balls and frisbees and stuff. So we want to plan for reforestation is the wrong word, but you know,
There'll be a rehab component to it. So I think that, but to like get back to where you're going,
thank you.
the first step is to review when we get the final report, see what that report looks like. And then it really is a matter of, you know, are we talking a dozen trees? Or are we talking 100 trees? That's where then we will start looking at, well, how are we going to handle this? You know, if it's a dozen trees, well, that's something, you know, a lot of times we can handle with our local fire crew. But if we're looking at something as, you know, large scale operation, if you will, you know, then we start exploring other avenues. So, and then sometimes with that too, we're a little bit at the mercy, if it is, you know, a timber sale, if you will, or whatever, you know, with their timing. Which on something, this would still be small scale, but, so we just need to, we'll start with the report, go from there, and then just being mindful. It's good to have you guys aware, because that's something we can always keep an eye on, you know, when we're out there.
When do you expect the final report?
Well, we got the draft last night.
Soon.
Soon. I mean, it requires a couple signatures, but I don't think anything above the forest supervisor.
Can we get a copy of that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'd like to go back to that word limb cast. I like that one, limb cast. Define limb cast for me.
So you're probably aware with especially large needle cast, right? When our beautiful yellow needles are done and the tree casts its needles to the ground, you get that basically that clump of needles circular around the tree. A limb cast would just be the same thing, but on a much larger scale.
So if I want to impress my wife tonight when I go home to rake, I'm going out to rake up some of the
leaf cast.
leaf cast.
Yes.
We got the leaf cast.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. Some new terminology.
Can we get a copy of that report too?
Absolutely. Thank you. Right.
I wouldn't share it out like, you know, publicly.
Yeah.
But yeah, something as partners you're helping us manage.
And when we did our walk around with Ian there, he pointed a lot of trees out that were potentially pretty dangerous.
Now, will you fall some of those before you start building? If there's big ones that, you know, are real bad that.
Yes. Yeah, I think before we start talking about putting up these little concrete toilets, about $60,000 toilets.
Yeah.
Before we put those, I think I'm imagining that clump, the clump of trees around toilets, yeah, I would like to make sure that we're not putting new infrastructure downrange.
Okay.
So, and that sort of scale is something that we can deal with internally when we're talking about the whole property, especially on the south side of the river. It gets tight in there, and it's like, especially with root rot, the rot is spread root to root contact. So the tighter growth or tighter your stand of trees are, yeah, the more rot that is. So
okay, so like you say, the final report we can have, but you really don't want that out to the public.
Yeah, I wouldn't. It's not a public document. We truly wouldn't want to create any unnecessary panic or alarm either.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and it's findings, but if somebody really wants it, there's other avenues they can get that.
yeah, I mean, it's not like it's a classified document or anything. If somebody off the street came to a front desk and said, "Hey, I heard that you just did a XYZ forest health report. Can I get that?" They would be handed a Freedom of Information Act request form. They fill that in, they submit it through the proper, through the address on the form, and then at some point, number of days, weeks later, it shows up in mail.
Well, I understand that, it's public property and a public thing that needs to be done. At the same time, like you say, we don't want to get people panicked or people saying, well, we can't go out there because trees are going to fall on us. So we have to be careful in terms of how we deal with this, at least until we got chainsaws running, I guess,
And it's kind of that, I see it as a bit of a chicken or the egg type thing. When we drop some, albeit green trees, and a number of them, and they're big, beautiful, majestic trees in a park-like setting, it definitely raises eyebrows. And so having that report that we can be like, point to and say, well, this is why we're doing this. And I mean, it's really helpful when that big majestic tree is put on the ground and the inner 2/3 of it is just punky rot. It's really easy to point to that and be like,
Right.
This was a matter of time. When it's that green tree that's seemingly not hollow, but when the report says like, hey, if you're seeing this, this, and this on it, it means these 3 bad things.
So the final report actually describes individual trees.
Does not describe individual trees. It will describe zones, 4 different quadrants of the park area. They'll also have pictures of like, yeah, this is what we're looking for, and especially like beetle holes and stuff like that. You or I, anybody, if you know what you're looking for, history major, bathroom cleaner guy, I can point and be like, ooh, yeah, that's bad.
Okay.
Sorry to open up that can of worms.
Yeah, or can of beetles in this case.
Yeah.
Well, it is what it is, we have to deal with it. So that's good to know that up front before we start, worrying about other things.
If I heard you right, though, when it comes time to restore, we don't have to start with seedlings necessarily.
You can get bigger stock, at least for this, see what it looks like and go from there.
Let's think of sequoia, right smack dab in the middle of the grass. I'm sure they'll grow great.
That should be fine.
Jokes.
No sequoia? Okay.
They actually grow pretty good up there. There's on 11th Street in Post Falls, there's a monstrous in there. I mean, not compared to the ones in California, but
We'll be cursing us in 300 years.
it's right.
So can I talk about
Yes, of course. Sorry.
I-90 East just for a minute, since we have this group and we're talking about forest health in regards to Shoshone Park. So I think you were at the last meeting and maybe heard me give like a 2-minute spiel on the next project area. But for our next 5-year planning effort for the Coeur d'Alene River District, we're calling our next project area I-90 East, which really is this greater Wallace area here to the Montana border. So that is going to be a combination of timber harvest, RX fire, PCT, etc. One component we've talked about that are kind of being prepared for is there'll probably be a recreation component too, just given everything else that's going on in this landscape. But depending on the timeline of that project, this potentially might be something we wrap into that project with the Shoshone Park and treating the trees in there. Maybe it'll end up being handled earlier, it might not. So either way, when the opportunity comes, we'll want to make sure we're talking and get that wrapped up into that project area.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but merchantability comes into play when we're talking about bringing in a bigger project area. Then we can say take an area that has trees that maybe are not very merchantable, but if that's wrapped into a bigger
Yep.
geographic,
We can still get the clearances covered. It might not go into, we have a planning area and we might end up handling it with 5 different types of sale types. Maybe we'll have a stewardship, G&A, etc. But there are different tools then we can use to actually do the treatment that we needed. So that
So
answer your
this,
question.
would this be part of like fire mitigation kind of stuff, where you're trying from here to lookout, basically, you're trying to treat the forest,
I don't know if I'd call it fire mitigation, but yes, overall forest health improvement, having a more resilient landscape with fires, maybe the way I would frame that. Obviously, this area has a rich history with the 1910 fires. Hasn't burned since the 1910 fires, so it is, and with the WUI associated with it along this corridor, it's a high priority for us. So I have no doubt there'll be many more meetings to come. We're just, we haven't even kicked it off yet, but it will be the next one to be kicked off. So,
so that's within the county.
it's within Shoshone County. Mm-hmm.
So that would affect some of your decisions too, I would imagine.
Yeah. Well, other than some not so good news about the trees, what else do we have?
Do you have anything else?
well, I let off with the good stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I'm supposed to sandwich it with more good stuff.
It would be good if you could put bookends on that, but yeah.
Really just like the next steps, right? So once we get the agreement in place, you guys will be able to pull the trigger, order the fabulous toilets.
Well, no, if we can get them by next fall, it puts a little more pressure on getting those trees taken care of. So that, because where are we gonna put them if we can't put them in, I mean, we don't wanna store them, so, that.
No, we had chatted with Ian and Anthony and I of doing the legwork to open that up as kind of a preferred firewood collection area. Have the moratorium on firewood collection in developed area right there lifted, but then even make the permit process really easy to basically anybody in the Silver Valley. Like, hey,
I'm sure it would disappear in a heartbeat.
especially if it's
Yeah.
Forest Service.
Absolutely.
Forest Service people
Yeah.
putting them on the ground and then even doing most of the work bucking, removing all the brush, chipping that, because especially with insects and things like that, you don't want to leave it there. You want it to be gone.
Yeah, if we can focus on the areas around where we're gonna put those 2 bathrooms, then, then we'd still be clear to do that next fall.
Yep, and I think that's totally
Yeah.
timetable wise reasonable.
Okay. In this whole process, one of the things that I've been doing is doing some research on, with the idea that, one of the things that we want to do is an interpretive trail throughout the park and beyond into the Shoshone Sportsman's Association. And I thought, well, we should start probably with the Coeur d'Alene Indians, because it was their land to begin with. Is in their territory. And I think what either the archaeologist or somebody brought up, have you talked to or done anything with the Coeur d'Alene, Coeur d'Alene's? And so I started by reading this book, which is the world of the Coeur d'Alene Indians, basically, which is pretty good. It really gives you an idea of what the tribe was like, what they believed, what their culture was and is. And but I was wondering, do we contact the Coeur d'Alene's, or does the Forest Service contact the Coeur d'Alene's? And how do we involve them in, I don't know, decision making, I guess, or what they would like to see? If we did it in this book and another book that I read, there's not a whole lot. There's nothing referencing that area, that particular area. There is, when the Mullen Road came in, they were against that because that was coming right through their territory, and that they was going to bring in all these people. And so I'm also reading John Mullen's book on John Mullen. So I guess my question basically is, do we let the archaeologists deal with that, or how does that work?
It'd be good to maybe before we enter into a discussion with the Coeur d'Alene River Tribe is have a little more of a proposal. I don't know. I'd be a little mindful about like framing as involved with the decision making. So we just want to put a little thought into that. But
Yeah.
I'd say let's have a few more discussions first to see what we're really, if we are proposing something, what that looks like. And then what we do is if we have, no matter what a project is, whether it's a new trail, what we just went through on Ridge Creek Fire, we have what we call tribal consultation.
Mm-hmm.
And we consult with them, kind of like we would with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on a project. And so we do tribal consultation to share like what our proposal is, what we're looking to, definitely asking for feedback and input that we can take into consideration. And then see how that would develop from that standpoint. And that's something that we can help lead discussions on.
Basically, the proposal, I think, would be, we see this interpretive trail as having a number of signs, and one of the signs would probably be about the Coeur d'Alene Indians.
Mm-hmm.
Like how they'd use the land, how would they use that particular part, if at all, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
There would also be one on the Mullen Road. There's also be one on I guess the first highway coming through, and then the Yellowstone Road coming through. That all came through that same area, so there's a lot of history there.
Mm-hmm.
And also another sign on the CCCs when they, came in and did it and did the work on the park. So there's a whole bunch of history that can be used to create a park that is not only just a picnic park, but also a historic attraction in some sense, like the Pulaski Tunnel Trail is. So that's basically what it would be, I think, in terms of what would we put on the sign, about the Coeur d'Alene's. I know that's down the road, but some of these things it takes time to do, and if we wait until we've got the toilets in before we start doing these other things, the project becomes a whole lot longer. So
I would mirror what Holly said. I think getting their participation eventually as some kind of cultural advice or historical advice might be more appropriate. That you're really just trying to get their input on some signage and history,
Yeah.
as opposed to the whole park project and that.
yeah,
I think it'd be easier to get them to buy into a small project like that, helping you develop the wording for a sign, as opposed to getting into the whole process.
Keep in mind, if we're talking about building a new trail in the park while it is owned and administered by the U.S. Forest Service. We're also going to be looking at NEPA for running down the NEPA process for building a new trail, which will also include tribal consultation, amongst other consultations with other resource areas. So if we're, it's just
In this project, I-90 East, there's gonna have to be a NEPA project, or process, wouldn't there?
That is, yep,
And
very
would-
large new
and
process.
wouldn't we be part of that rather than a separate? Because when we did the Pulaski Tunnel Trail, there was a NEPA about that whole water, drainage from like Moon Pass down, and we just tagged along on that basically. So,
There could be opportunity there, yes.
so that would make that whole project, our project is part of that, which would make it a lot simpler in terms of, rather than doing a whole separate NEPA, I would think.
Is there such a thing as a simple NEPA?
Well, actually,
The walk trail, once it leaves the park, it enters Sportsman Association. We don't need all them reports for that.
no,
that's what you guys do with them.
We just build a trail and get up there and build our own bridge back across the river and back down.
Okay. What else you guys got?
what else do we have? Anything else?
I'm good on my end.
Sounds like we're making progress.
Yeah,
Yeah.
didn't want to hear about the trees, but that's okay.
Yeah,
Gotta live with it.
Well,
we kinda knew that was coming.
Yeah, we did.
We didn't know how extensive. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
That'll be
And it
good.
needs to be done, so if it's,
Well, you want it safe for the next generation and the next one. That's what we're doing it for.
And doesn't cutting those down slow the process of spreading the diseases? I mean, unfortunately, that's just gonna have to be a part of our future. So,
All right.
and again, it'd be nice if we had a map of the park. I don't think we have any kind of a map of the park, we need, to really help us determine, okay, if we cut this tree down, where do we want to plant another tree? In the same spot or someplace over here, depending upon the whole layout of the park. So,
I think I can help with the GIS product.
yeah, if we can get a
Not
really,
me, but
yeah,
I know a guy. I'll know the
They
guy.
have connections.
So the next meeting is at Churchland Park, bring your favorite chainsaw on.
Giant Walmart sugar.
Okay, well, so we're moving ahead on maybe expanding on the one end. We're moving ahead, we're thinking about the trails, the biggie, the rack grant is done.
That's the big of them restrooms.
Yeah, so there's some good news there.
Yeah, for sure.
now speaking of publicity, is it, should we contact the newspaper about, this grant? I mean, that's public information, correct? And, it's, because that's a good feather in our cap, of $130,000 for the park. I mean, that's something, so, and giving you credit, because you wrote it, so, and it's good for the Forest Service too, in terms of, things are moving along, so that's okay to,
It'd be good if you have
Sure.
I noticed you guys have a Facebook page. Blast something out there and it can be the beginning of your story. We got the grant, but then, so people aren't, and maybe it's to help tell the story too when they start seeing the trees come down. This is why we're doing it. Besides the forest health, it's to protect the new infrastructure and the longevity of your park.
Safety.
And so,
And this $130,000 isn't going to pay for all the other things that we want to do in the park. So knowing that you've got more weed have more fundraising to do.
Mhm.
More publicity is good. We haven't even begun to start seeking funds for a restoration project on the west kitchen shelter, which we know we're going to have to fundraise for. So, anyways, yeah.
Yeah, they like to see good news and
Yeah.
like to contribute to, I'm
Progress.
sure. So when it comes time to fundraising, they're like, hey, let's help out with this project. Look what they're doing.
And even approaching Heckle about land donations, I think it's good that we keep this in the news so that, if they did something there, we'd want to put that in the news too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keep the momentum going, that everybody's in on this thing. We're trying to build something for the long range.
Right.
Well, don't be surprised if you get a request from a reporter to be interviewed.
A friendly one.
Yeah.
Anything further?
I think that's good enough for today. Are you going out to the park?
Yeah, I think we're gonna go swing through.
Have you seen it at all yet?
No.
Do you want some company?
I don't know, you guys look really busy.
That was yesterday. I had to do a plumbing job yesterday. 10 years ago, it probably took me 2 hours. Yeah, it was about an 8-hour job. I don't like plumbing.
I don't blame you. Here you are getting ready to put in 2 more toilets.
They don't flush.
Oh, now you tell us. No wonder that we got them for 60. All right, well, with that, we'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you.